Hey everybody, I'm Andrew from the Flutter team, and today we're going to dive into some of the recent updates to A2UI and the GenUI package, two tools you can use to turn walls of text like this into proper agentic experiences with rich, interactive application UI. Generative UI, or GenUI, is a UX pattern where agents generate content and decide how it's presented to users. Flutter developers can implement this using A2UI, an open protocol for agent-client UI collaboration, and package GenUI, a Flutter package that leverages A2UI to give agents a catalog of widgets they can use to build UIs. Both of these recently got an update. The latest release of package GenUI introduces several architectural changes to the framework. Driven by adoption of version 0.9 of the A2UI protocol, this update shifts GenUI from a structured output first philosophy, in which A2UI messages were streamed through structured output APIs, to a prompt first approach, in which agents just include blocks of JSON as text in their responses. It also decouples the architecture, providing more direct control over how your application connects to your agent. Let's get into the new stuff. In previous versions, GenUI relied on a series of classes based on content generator. These classes hid a lot of the details of prompt construction, LLM network calls, and response parsing. The latest version of package GenUI removes content generator. Instead, the framework is now split into distinct layers. An engine manages the state and rendering of the UI, transport streams messages between the agent and client, sometimes called a renderer in A2UI parlance, and finally there's a convenient facade class, conversation, that you can use to manage the interaction with the agent. This decoupling means you have control over chat history, retry logic, and error handling. The framework no longer wraps your agent with a content generator, so you're free to use the model and provider you'd prefer, tweak generation settings, add your own functions, and so on, without needing to go through the framework's API to do so. Because content generator is gone, the provider-specific wrapper packages that used to ship with GenUI are no longer needed. Here's an example of how you used to wire things up. You can see there's a content generator that accepts the catalog and system instruction, and it's paired with a GenUI manager to create the conversation. In the new version, there is no content generator to be found. Instead, you first create your catalog and use it to instantiate a surface controller. Next, you create a transport adapter with an onSend callback that's called whenever the GenUI library needs to send a message to your agent. And it's your app's job to take that message, send it to your agent, and then feed the response back into the GenUI library using the adapter's addChunk method. Once that's done, you can create a conversation with the surface controller and transport adapter. Now, you might look at those two examples and think, wait, shouldn't API improvements mean I have to write less code rather than more? And it's true that previously this little bit of wiring code for connecting with the agent was included in the GenUI package, tucked away in a content generator class. But the new approach has some concrete advantages. Without the requirement of a content generator, you can set up your agent the way you like, hold it in memory where you prefer, and manage its lifecycle. You can also use nearly any AI source you'd like without waiting on a package update with a new content generator. You no longer have to inject your connection to the agent into the GenUI API. They're loosely coupled now with just tokens moving back and forth. Testing is simpler too. GenUI accepts tokens directly, and they can come from an agent, or a mock agent, or a hard-coded test. And if you'd like to encapsulate your connection into a class, you can still do so. In fact, several of the examples in the GenUI repo take that approach. All right, so that's a look at the new architecture. Next, let's talk about the shift to a prompt-first approach in A2UI 0.9. In previous versions, the GenUI package relied heavily on each LLM provider's API-level constraints, like JSON mode or complex function calling definitions, in order to force the model to output valid UI structures. The schema was passed to the agent out of band through specific API parameters, and the LLM was effectively locked into a rigid structure. Although this approach produced reliable JSON, deeply nested schemas often confused models and restricted catalog complexity and made debugging difficult by hiding constraints in the network layer, those content generators and AI clients. The prompt-first approach shifts the source of truth back to where LLMs excel, system instructions. Instead of relying entirely on strict API toggles, the UI schema and instructions relating to A2UI are just added to the LLM system prompt as plain text. This change means responsibility for getting the right prompt into the agent's context window now rests with your app. Fortunately, the GenUI package provides a new tool to help you craft the right system prompt for your application, Prompt Builder. Given a catalog and any additional instructions you'd like to provide, Prompt Builder will create a system prompt that includes the schema definitions and rules that your model needs to format A2UI messages correctly. Once set up, your app can retrieve a string version of the prompt using promptbuilder.systemPrompt, and then pass that value to the LLM. Okay, those are the two biggies, but there's more. If your code manually constructs A2UI JSON or relies on specific payload structures, note these breaking changes from the A2UI 0.9 update. I'm not going to read this, I'll just give you a second. All right, along with some other small tweaks, the GenUI prefix has been dropped from almost all core classes. And speaking of core catalog items was renamed to basic catalog items to clarify that it serves as a baseline implementation rather than a strict requirement. And to align with standard LLM function calling terminology, GenUI function declaration and references to tools have been renamed to client function. In other news, the GenUI package no longer ships with its own messaging types. Instead, the GenUI team created the new GenAI primitives package with primitive types for common functionality needed by GenAI applications. This package includes types like chat message or message part. These new types are used across the GenUI package API, and they're flexible enough to fit into other GenAI applications or packages that you might be working on. Finally, in addition to the above, the latest version of A2UI in the GenUI package brings several new features like custom functions you can use for things like validating data on the client, a new modular schema, and improved error handling. For more information on these, check out the A2UI 0.9 announcement blog post. You can find a link in the metadata for this video. All right, that's it for this one. GenUI is a real thing, but it's still fairly new. So if you've got a question about how it works or where to use it, leave a comment on this video. You might inspire the next one. In the meantime, happy coding, and I'll see you next time.